Don't be disabled in spirit as well as physically. Stephen Hawking. This is AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Shymanski. Today, we're reviewing a book I wish I was able to read 5 years ago. Let me explain. We're talking about a self-help book and practical guide on adapting to vision loss. So, I lost my vision in my early to mid-20s, and I'm almost 29 now, and the process of adapting was slow and never-ending. This book is exactly what I needed at the time, and something I think that a lot of people going through vision loss now and in the future will find invaluable. It's called Refocus, The Essential Guide to Living a Happy and Successful Life with Vision Loss by Sean Maloney and Victoria Nolan. It's available on Audible right now. It's about 4.5 hours, narrated by Sam Rosenthal. I could read to you the synopsis, but I thought the note to the reader right at the start of the audiobook does a great job at setting it up. Plus, you get a sample of Sam Rosenthal's narration. So, here's the note to the reader.
Losing your vision, or watching someone you love go through it, can feel like stepping into the unknown. It's disorienting, overwhelming, and often isolating. We know because we've been there. That's why we wrote this book, not as distant experts or motivational speakers, but as two people living with vision loss daily. We wanted to create the kind of guide we desperately needed when we were first diagnosed, one that is practical, personal, and hopeful. Inside, you'll find real stories, hard-won lessons, and a robust framework. The 7 A's of vision loss that applies not only to navigating blindness or low vision, but to facing any adversity.
The cover, for those interested, has a black background with the letters of an eye chart gradually fading as they go down. One of the authors of Refocus, Victoria Nolan, is on the show today, joining us from Toronto. Victoria, thank you so much for making time.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
First off, how did you wind up in a position in your life where writing this book was what you needed to do? How did this come to be?
So Sean Maloney is a friend of mine, and we both have retinitis pigmentosa. And we have often heard people say, well, no one's written the book on how to go blind. And we had been joking about, someone should write that book. And
why not?
Yeah. And I loved hearing you say that you wish you had read it, because that's exactly what we set out to do, is to write the book that we wish we had when we were first diagnosed. We have really contrasting backgrounds and experiences. So Sean is very much in the business world and the education world. He's a PhD in genetic eye disease research. I was a Paralympic athlete. So we really had complementary skills that we felt between the two of us, we could share a lot of really valuable information.
And you approached this book by organizing it in 7 chapters, which you call the 7 A's of vision loss. Well, what are the 7 A's?
So the 7 A's are set out to really take the reader through a journey, beginning with the initial stage that we feel needs to happen before you go on this journey, which is acceptance. And starting with acceptance, which is not giving in. We explain that acceptance is more about accepting that you're about to go on this journey. So recognizing that things are going to change, and that's not a bad thing. So starting from acceptance, you move on through adaptation, through attitude, through advocacy, awareness, accessibility, and the final chapter, the goal that we hope everyone will get to, is achievement. So feeling like you were able to achieve your goals, and in many cases excel at those goals.
So one of the things you make clear early on in the book is that you want it to be a reference guide, something you can pick up at in any of the different 7 A's, depending on what you need at that time. It's very much pitched as a manual, like a user guide for blindness, if you will. Why was it important for you to set it up that way instead of a memoir, which is what we see a lot?
I think that's something that's missing, is that, when you're going through this, whether it's the initial diagnosis, or you're going through changes, because as we all know, our vision changes throughout our lives. As you're trying to adapt, you don't necessarily want to sit down and spend hours and hours like thinking about it. So we thought this guide, you can just, like you said, you just pick it up and be like, oh, I'm really struggling with technology. I'm going to turn to the technology section. Um,
Mm.
Sometimes that's easier than, I know a lot of people have struggled with trying to get this information. Of course, it's available on the internet, but trying to search that out and, making sure that it is relevant to your particular eye disease or where you're living in the world, all of that. We tried to make this book really simple, sort of the foundation of what you need to know, regardless of what stage you're at or where you are living.
And relating to this topic of acceptance, which is the very first A,
Hmm.
that's where you share that quote from Stephen Hawking. It was the first time I'd ever heard it. Um, um, he says, don't be disabled in spirit as well as physically. How do you interpret that quote? Because the way I interpret it is, if you let yourself be disabled in spirit, it means giving up. That's the way I interpret it. I'd love to know what your take on it is.
Yeah, so my take on
Mm.
it is that, so specifically around blindness and vision loss, a lot of people think that that is the limiting factor. I don't believe it's the vision loss that's the limiting factor. I believe it's your emotional and mental health. So if you
Hmm.
are depressed, discouraged, there's no way you can solve whatever, challenges to overcome that vision loss. You need to be healthy in mind to be able to move forward.
And you to hit on this topic of mental health, I have a little excerpt here where you talk about how um, one of the biggest limitations is just depression. You say many people who have low vision or blindness believe that the many limitations they are facing are due to lack of eyesight, but it often turns out it is depression causing the limitations.
Exactly.
What is it about depression that's stopping people more than vision loss?
Well, I think if you're depressed, and I mean, I went through this myself, you don't have the strength to, like, it does take some strength, some courage, some motivation, right? I know for me, like, leaving the house was terrifying for a
Yeah,
while.
me too.
And so, yeah, if you're depressed, why are you, there's no motivation to push yourself out there. Um, but yeah, if you can cure that, and you're able to have that resolve, like, okay, I'm going to find a way to overcome this. I'm going to figure out, other people have done this before, there must be a way. But again, you need to have that mental wellness to make that decision to push yourself.
And you give a great example of something in your life that happened. It's you adapting and like putting in the effort to make it work for you. And it's when I think you were on maternity leave, and at the same time you had a bout of vision loss, and you were working as a teacher, I believe,
Hmm.
at the time. And
Hmm.
then you came back, and the principal was very reluctant to have you come back on because of your vision loss. You ended up finding a way to change your environment, going to another school with a new principal that was much more open minded, and you ended up working there, and it was
Hmm.
a really good job, and they were very accommodating.
Yep. That
How,
was
like, what's, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that was huge learning for me.
Yeah,
My
no kidding.
perspective, yeah, before that, my perspective was very linear and narrow. It was very logical and scientific, and like, I've wanted to be a teacher my whole life. This is my job. So now this principal is telling me I shouldn't be a teacher because I have a disability. Like, my life is over. I have no career. What am I going to do? And then I realized, like, you can you can be a little more open-minded. It doesn't have to be, just because you thought things were headed this way, you need to be flexible and realize, okay, there's other ways this can be done. And there are things that you do have control over. So I realized, yeah, I don't have control over what this person thinks about me, but I can
Mm.
control who I choose to surround myself with or where I choose to work. And I know that's a little easier said than done, but in my case, I just kept searching out until I found a principal who saw the value in having me at their school, and that changed everything.
Your environment is so crucial in your success. It's like what they used to tell us when we were younger, that the people we surround ourselves with like have such a big impact on us. They can also hold us back, and that applies when you have a disability as well. You want to get people who can work with you instead of pulling you back down. And you,
Yes.
you talked about the things that we can control, and one of those things is attitude, and that's another one of your A's. What are the lessons you're trying to impart in that chapter?
Oh, so I think there's two parts to the attitude chapter. So one is your own attitude. So that's again tied to that mental health, and that changing the way you think about some of the things that are frustrating you can really benefit you. And then the flip side to that is other people's attitudes and what you can do to either to not let it affect you so much personally when, people's attitudes are negative, and what you can do to sort of combat that in the way of like educating people, or just strengthening yourself to feel like you are moving forward rather than being held back by other people's attitudes.
You share a really wild piece of advice that you heard from somebody, and I've been so eager to ask you this question because it's a piece of advice you got from somebody called Robin Clark. She's a curriculum director
Yes.
for the Utah School of the Deaf and Blind.
Mhm.
This piece of advice just blew my mind. I immediately told my girlfriend about it, and we had like a long conversation about it. Now, this is her piece of advice, and I couldn't tell if you get behind it or if you just brought it up as an interesting piece of advice. And I want to know your thoughts. What she says is that it's essentially that if you're blind and you're out and about, put on a good show for everyone because people are watching you. It's just a fact. So put on a good show because when you're out there doing whatever it is that you do, you are kind of educating people just by being there, by existing. Put on a good
Mhm.
show. What
Yep.
do you mean by put on a good show? Like, what's your take on this?
So that is a strategy that it's obviously not going to work all the time. Like sometimes I go out and I'm like, oh, I just want to be anonymous. I don't want people staring at me. Like I just want to be
Right.
like everyone else. But if you're feeling courageous that day, and it's a it's a way to give yourself a little bit of strength and power. It's like, yeah, you know what? They're going to stare at me, so I'm going to show them that I listen to my email with a voiceover, and they're going to see me using my iPhone, or whatever it is, I can put on lipstick without looking while I'm sitting on the bus. Or like, I don't know, like it's just like it gives you a
It's
little,
putting on a show.
yeah, it's gives you a little bit of control, right? It's like you don't have to feel like you're I guess victimized, or like, that you have to be upset that people are staring at you. You're taking control of the situation and you're gonna say, look at me, this is what I can do.
I think
Like
what's
it,
so intriguing about this piece of advice is that it kind of goes against the intuition of a lot of blind people, which is I just want to fit in. Like I just want to be normal.
yeah,
And to put on a show is completely flipping it. Is saying like, I don't care if people look at me. I've got
yeah,
these adaptations. It's the way I do things. If you look, you look. Who cares?
yeah,
It's putting out positive energy. And you do a really good job in this book of being very realistic and honest about the implications of vision loss and that it comes a lot of challenges. But like, how do you balance that positivity with being realistic? Because you can't just go out there every day putting on a giant show because eventually you're going to screw up, right? Like we do
yeah.
make mistakes, everybody. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Mm.
it's interesting 'cause, of course, whenever I do interviews or talks, I'm being very positive. I'm not gonna spend the time making people feel miserable about the hard times that I have, right? So, of course, there's hard times. Um, so how do you balance it? There's different things we talk about in the book. For example, I know, like, I have a guide dog, and so I still, believe it or not, experience discrimination with people saying you can't bring a dog in here, or
Oh, I believe you.
people being afraid of him. But there's also so many positive experiences where people are inspired by me, or or just my dog makes them happy, and it's important to make note of those because I think as human beings, we remember the negative stuff really easily and tend to forget the positive. So keep a journal of the positive things that happen so you can remind yourself, like, oh yeah, this person told me that I made their day or whatever. Um, so making a point of recognizing the good things, I think, is important. But there's tips like that throughout the book.
Yeah, and recognizing the good things, the positives, is the entire point of chapter 7, your A7 on achievement. Like,
Mhm.
why did you feel it important to have an entire chapter devoted to achievement and recognizing what you've done?
So there's a few things. First of all, is there are some incredible people with low vision and blindness. Like
Yes.
the things they have achieved are just incredible. And it's not to say you need to aspire to be that person, but I think in just hearing those stories, it opens your mind to the idea that there are so many possibilities of what's open to you. So hearing that, everything from mountain climbing to becoming a doctor, and then that might get you thinking like, oh yeah, maybe my dream isn't over. Maybe there is a way for me to do what it is I want to do. I don't know. We just thought it opens people up to that idea that anything is possible.
Because people have done it. There have been blind judges, blind lawyers,
Yeah.
blind influencers, and YouTubers, and
Hmm.
municipal politicians. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of very successful blind people out there, and people need to see that.
Yeah.
And you have a chapter on awareness, and one of the things you say in there is representation and why it matters. This is something we talk about all the time at AMI. I don't think
Hmm.
it's controversial to say that we need more blind representation because accurate depictions of people with blindness are very hard to come by. But when they're
Hmm.
well done, it's extremely powerful. But another thing you talk about in awareness is language. And I suppose this also ties into advocacy. And I've read in other books sections on language where you basically advise they advise able-bodied people to not use certain words. And we got to that part in this book, and I went, "Oh boy, here we go." I'm kind of opinionated about this, but I'm so on board with where you went with it. There's some people who say to completely avoid using words like and expressions like he was completely blind to the fact that X and Y, or we went to go watch a movie.
Hmm.
Uh, my view of it is that you don't you don't need to change the entire English language, but you do
Hmm.
touch on one specific thing that does bother me, and that's when people say, especially doctors, suffering from blindness. I don't know about you, but I'm not suffering from
Yeah.
blindness.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like where you stand on all of this. Like, how did you come to that conclusion for this book?
Yeah,
Mm.
I don't think I've fully delved into this. I know for me personally, it doesn't bother me, like you said, like if someone says watch
Right.
the movie or whatever, that doesn't bother me.
Me neither.
However, I do see that there are a lot of negative connotations that I think we don't really, like, we're not really conscious of it happening, right? But it is perpetuating that stereotype. So, in that sense, I think we need to think a little bit before we speak. But yeah, I'm not super hung up on using those terms. Um, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about
I
that.
just thought it was really refreshing. It was a refreshing take on it that just didn't go into a super anal take about controlling people's language.
Yeah.
It really bugs me, and it makes disability advocacy look really unapproachable and like
Yes.
aggressive. You know, that's my problem with it. So I thought it was a good bit of effective advocacy. Um, Now in that same chapter, I thought this was super interesting. You talk about demonstrations. Do you Can you touch on that one a little bit? Because I thought that was such an interesting chapter. Like, what's your take on these blindness demonstrations and how they're done correctly or badly? Because they do these in schools a lot, where they have like the CNIB or like some other blindness organization come in with a demonstration, like what it's like to be blind. Like, how do you do it properly, and how is it done poorly?
Um, Yeah, good question. So, yeah, we are not fans of, put on a blindfold and this is what it's like to be blind, because of course that doesn't simulate it at all, because you have that freedom to take it off. And also, you don't have that same feeling of, this is something I need to adapt to. It's almost like a little fun activity. So definitely does not simulate blindness at all. There are different ways you can do it. So, one thing I do when I talk to students is to talk about a routine that they could do repeatedly with their eyes closed and think about what they have to do to adapt to that activity over time. I think that's more realistic. So, for example, I'll say, every night when you brush your teeth, do it with your eyes closed. So you've got to find your toothbrush, you've got to get the toothpaste on the toothbrush. Do that for a week, and I bet by the end of the week, you've got some really good strategies of how to make that easier for yourself. And, that's how people with blindness do.
So essentially, instead of just telling people to put a blindfold on and that's it, you're saying to put on the blindfold, but then like teach them an adaptation that we do, like putting
Yeah.
toothpaste on a toothbrush. I
Yeah.
people have asked me like, how do you put toothpaste on the toothbrush? I've never thought of it. I've never thought of it. I just do it, right? It's one of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do a lot of talks with students, and so yeah, the questions that come up are quite funny. Yeah, the other one I get a lot from kids is, "How do you wash your hair?" And I'm just like, "What do you mean? I just wash it." What?
I think you're way overthinking this.
Yeah.
But you have to tell these people things, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not obvious. There's so many questions. And so do you see the value in these demonstrations?
I think it gets a conversation going, yeah, and I think if you can
Mm,
involve people, more than just talking at them, so if you can get them involved a little bit, I think it does help. Hopefully, there's a dialogue that comes out of it. It's not just do this and then it's like, "Haha," or "Cool." Um, yeah, so there's, one that I do, this is not exactly a demonstration, but this always, gets a huge conversation going is when people ask like what do you see, like is it pitch black, or
mm.
what do things look like to you, and I say to them take your hand and put it behind your head, and then now what your hand looks like, that's what I can see, and it just like blows their mind, and then it really gets a discussion going.
I do remember a couple of these when I was younger, and they were sometimes awkward, sometimes helpful. But one thing they always did was start the conversation, and that's
Yeah.
very valuable. And that touches on advocacy, which is another A,
Hmm.
or another one of the chapters that you have.
Hmm.
And you touched on something I thought was super interesting. You say when the problem is clearly defined and potential improvements are proposed, others are often willing to offer support and make necessary adjustments. In other words, you need to do the work to present the solution instead of just pointing at the problem. So
Yeah.
it's part of it is on us, people with vision loss and blindness, to guide people to solutions, to make things accessible for us, to include us.
Yeah.
Do you think that we often don't do enough to do our part in this bargain of making things accessible, making things inclusive?
I think it is very hard to do. I know I struggle with it. It's like you have enough to do with, just figuring out what you're doing, and to be asked to figure out how other people should help you too is a lot to ask sometimes. But I
Mm,
think there are ways. So, for example, you don't have to um, give minute details as to how they can help you, but I love just saying to people, like, just ask questions. How can I help you? That's what people can do. Have that conversation. Say, what can I do to help you? That will get the ball rolling, because I think a lot of times those conversations don't happen because people are just afraid. They don't know what the possibilities are. They're afraid to ask questions, and so if you're encouraged to just come out and have that conversation, that gets the ball rolling. And then you can get into the details and have some back and forth and involve other people.
And you have a lot of advice in this book along these lines on how to present yourself, especially in the on attitude and awareness, those chapters. But let me present this scenario. Like, say you're in a new building, a university campus or something, and you sort of know where you're going. You have vision loss, but you sort of know where you're going. You got your cane, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, can I help you?" Do you have advice for the person with vision loss in that scenario on how to handle that interaction to get the best results, to get the most positive interaction? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that you need to give some thought to that ahead of time, as because everyone's individual, right? So what is
Mm,
it that you need? So that you have the answer ready ahead of time. If you're still figuring out what you need, I would be transparent and say, I'm kind of new to this. I'm still figuring out, but let's see if we can, let's see if we can figure out how we can work together. You don't have to say that. You know what I mean?
mm.
Just, yeah, being transparent, I think, is a huge help, because it's going to put that person at ease. They're probably a little bit nervous about helping. So just being honest, and like for me personally, I will say to them, yeah, is it okay if I take your elbow and I'll just follow? Let me know if there's any stairs coming up, or, so just have it ready as to what you actually need.
To be clear about what you need and almost have it like a prepared answer,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to always have it in the back of your head. That's
And
exhausting.
I know. I know. I was going to say, don't be afraid to stop too. Like, I think sometimes I feel like, oh, everyone's in a hurry. I got to, don't be afraid to just stop and take a minute and figure out where you are. And you don't need to rush.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Mhm.
Before we started recording, I asked you a question about you self-publishing this book. I was surprised that you had trouble getting publishers to bite on this one. I could
Mhm.
so get behind it just on principle. So
Mhm.
many people could use this. Like, just out of curiosity, what was that process like trying to get this thing published?
We were lucky to secure an agent. So we were so excited. We thought that would
Mm,
be the hard part. So we had an agent who had connections with publishers. And so we thought for sure someone will be interested in this because between Sean and I, we have a lot of connections in the blindness community. There isn't a book like this. This is the first of its kind. So we thought, obviously, like this is a no-brainer. So yeah, we were surprised no one picked it up. We're hoping it's not because publishers think that, people who are blind can't read. So what are these guys doing publishing this, trying to publish this book? We were worried that that was part of the problem, which again reinforces the fact that we need this book out there to help raise awareness. So yeah, it was frustrating, but I mean, self-publishing, like I said, we have the connections, so I think we'll be able to, get the word out there that this book is here, whether or not we have a publisher. So we're moving forward anyway.
Well, Victoria, even if this thing wasn't published, I still think you guys have a decent chance of getting quite a few sales on this thing because I love this on principle, and it reminds me of another book that we reviewed on the show called Philosophy by Ardra Shepherd, which is a little bit more memoir-y than this one, but it is kind of a user guide for if you have MS, multiple sclerosis. It's
Mhm.
actually quite similar. It's meant to be very referential, but I so see the value in this. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention about this book that we didn't get to that you absolutely need to put out there?
I think I would say this book is also useful
Mhm.
for family, friends,
Yes.
professionals who work
hmm
with people in the community. It gives you another perspective, and I'm sure there's definitely information that would be new to you as well.
There's a lot of information that was new to me too.
Hmm.
In the section for adapting, you
Hmm.
have a huge list, like a massive list of examples of adaptations of things. And I hadn't heard of like half of them. I thought they were genius.
Oh, awesome.
I'm not going to spoil them all here, but I was really surprised. And
Yeah.
it to me, and I don't know about you, but sometimes we come up with adaptations and we even forget that they're adaptations. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, and there's so many, like, you think of adaptations, you're probably thinking like technology, but there's some that are just so practical around the house that you can help you without spending any money.
My girlfriend and I, when we're in the house, she's also blind. To know where each other are, I'll say
Yes.
"voy," and then she'll respond "voy," so that we don't bump into each other. It actually works pretty well. We look a
That's
little
awesome.
insane, but our
No,
friends have
that's
actually
great.
picked up on it too.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great.
We don't think it's weird anymore. But honestly, fantastic book. Best of luck in the future. We really appreciate the work that you did here, Victoria. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing the info.
Yeah, of course. We were talking about Refocus, the essential guide for living a happy and successful life with vision loss by Sean Maloney and Victoria Nolan. That was Victoria Nolan that we were just talking to. The book is available on Audible right now, narrated by Sam Rosenthal. It's also surely going to be on Sela sometime very soon. That's all the time we have for this edition of AMI Audiobook Review. AMI Audiobook Review airs weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and repeats every 6 hours. We're also on all the big podcasting platforms, and that includes YouTube. You can email us your feedback at audiobookrareview@ami.ca, and you can follow us on Instagram at AMI Audiobook Review. The handle is at AMI Audiobook Review. I'm Jacob Shymanski. Thanks for listening.